Man, that was a fast hour. Thanks for joining us. We are live today, May 7th, 2009, AmericanFreedomRadio.com. I am your narrator, your radio gun Jack Blood, Jerome Corsi, with us from WorldNet Daily. And again, he has a new newsletter out called Red Alert. You can find out how to get that. Just simply Google it, and I would suggest becoming a member and finding out what's going on in the world. Some of which we're talking about on the show today. Not a lot of time left, Jerry. Unfortunately, I want to hit a couple of things. Ethanol, bioengineering, and NAFTA. Let's start with ethanol. The dirty little secret of ethanol. There's so many. Where do we start?
Well, I've been writing about this extensively, Jack, and the one I'm writing about now is it takes so much water. It takes 142 gallons of water to produce 1 gallon of ethanol. And this is a problem, especially as additional acreage is developed for corn to be made into ethanol, and it's being developed out in the West, which is already water deficient. I mean, the West desperately needs water, and we're diverting it to produce ethanol. I've also written extensively that ethanol, there's a huge number. I've documented at least a dozen ethanol manufacturers that have gone out of business in the last year. They're bankrupt. Because even with a 45-cent a gallon subsidy...
Subsidies again, yes.
Right. You can't make ethanol profitably, not when gasoline is $2.25 a gallon and corn is at over $3 a bushel. You can't make it work. And so even California, on a carbon basis, has decided, their Environmental Protection Agency, that ethanol is not the future because it takes so much coal to produce ethanol. You're using more hydrocarbons to produce ethanol than you're saving.
Yeah, the environmentalists seem to miss that, as well as the bioengineering thing we're going to be talking about here in a second. Right. You know, I've taken on some of the people and made a lot of enemies by saying some of the things that you're saying, and then we add to that, cui bono, who benefits from this? And we see that the oil companies already have contracts to refine this. So that's the other myth, that anyone who's against this is working for the oil companies when they stand to benefit. Not to mention, companies like Monsanto, who are growing the corn. The middlemen, the monopolists here, who are benefiting from this extensively. I mean, we have other alternatives, even sugar if you're going to use ethanol, or certainly hemp, which I have been promoting, or solar, or even hydrogen, some form of electric. I mean, there are other alternatives here. It's not that corn ethanol is the only alternative.
Well, that's right. And, the idea that we're going to be burning more hydrocarbons and saving to produce ethanol ought to ring the bell with the environmentalists. And there's no way around that.
No, they have selective hearing, Jerry, as you know.
Pardon me?
They have selective hearing.
Well, it's an ideological argument. It's an argument that, it's renewable, we can grow more corn. But in terms of the science and the economics, it doesn't really work.
Speaking of the environmentalists and where are they now, why aren't we having a debate? Obama announced that bioengineering will save us from global warming, allegedly global warming, climate change, and that they'll be manipulating the weather. Well, that isn't anything new, as you know, and it's something I never hear environmentalists talk about.
Well, this is a remarkable article I wrote in Red Alert. John Holden, who's President Obama's new science advisor, he told the Associated Press that global warming is such a dire possibility. And, of course, I think this whole global warming thing is a hoax. But at any rate, the Obama administration is now actively discussing radical technologies to engineer the climate by shooting pollution into the upper atmosphere, actually putting sulfate particles into the upper atmosphere to reflect back the sun's rays. And I thought that was insane until I then got a copy of one of the recent Foreign Affairs magazines, I think the most recent issue, and there are two Stanford professors in there, professors about geoengineering.
You're talking about the Council on Foreign Relations magazine.
Foreign Relations, which is, again, a major group, and a group that has always promoted globalism. But they are, again, these two scientists are actively talking about deploying these systems of geoengineering on a planetary scale, which would launch these reflective sulfate particles into the upper atmosphere to cool down the Earth, like to produce a sunshade similar to if a major volcano erupted. And to me, this is, Jack, this is kind of a science fiction nightmare, because how do we know that the sulfate particles aren't themselves going to be harmful to human health? And what are the consequences down the road with us attempting to block the sun from the planet?
Yeah.
It's a major human intervention into the planet with a lot of unforeseen consequences that I'm sure are inevitable. And the idea that we're going to pollute the planet in order to save the planet, to me, is as insane as in Vietnam. We heard people say we had to destroy this village in order to save the village. I mean, it doesn't make any sense at all.
It takes a village, I guess, to be this stupid and arrogant. Really, it's arrogance to think that you can harness the world's climate and weather. We have been following this for years, talking about things like weather war and global economic parity, and using the weather in order to wipe out agriculture at certain points of the world who maybe aren't going along with what the New World Order wants us to do here for global governance. And then, of course, we have done expose after expose on the thing called chemtrails or aerosol spraying and weather modification, which has been used now for decades.
Well, as I get into this and I researched it, I'm finding that the governments around the world, including China today and the United States, have put billions of dollars into weather modification technologies. And this is not science fiction. It's actual, real government policy. And here, you've got the current science advisor in the White House telling the Associated Press that we can geoengineer the climate by putting pollution in the upper atmosphere and shooting it up there.
Jerry, is it a coincidence? What came first, the chicken or the egg here? What came first, climate control or bioengineering, which has, again, been going on for years?
Well, again, it's a very difficult question to answer. I mean, these whole technologies, which the government has often denied exist, are now being brought forward as a solution to global warming. And, Jack, I can see that the Earth is warmer than it was 10,000 years ago when glaciers covered North America and mammoths were running around, but I doubt very much it had anything to do with the cavemen and their little carbon fires.
Hey, can you stay for just a couple minutes on the other side, and we'll finish this up with Jerome Corsi. Second hour coming up, Sally Castile, DEA whistleblower, also on our program today. Stay tuned. Deadline Live, AmericanFreedomRadio.com. We'll be back in just about 2 minutes. Locked and loaded for the information war. Second hour of Deadline Live coming your way this 7th day of May. It's 2009. I'm Jack Blood, your narrator, your radio gun, reporting for the next hour. We're on the air Monday through Friday, 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. Central Time, right here out of Austin, Texas, on the one and only AmericanFreedomRadio.com, and all of our great affiliates. Thank you guys for picking up our show. Jerome Corsi was our guest in the first hour. We had a couple of more minutes here in this short segment, so I wanted to round it all out. Jerry, thanks again. I know you're busy. I appreciate all the time you gave us today.
Great pleasure to be with you, Jack. Thank you.
Red Alert is your new newsletter, Jerome Corsi's Red Alert, and you can Google that, find it at WorldNet Daily, and I'm going to sign up for it, Jerry. I really enjoy a lot of the work that you do. Again, we don't agree with everything you say, but I like it. Hey, I want to talk about NAFTA. We don't have a whole lot of time here, but suffice to say, Obama used this as a campaign promise that he was going to be looking at it or perhaps repealing it, and then we found Austin Goolsbee out talking to Canada saying, don't worry, he's not going to do anything to NAFTA other than beef it up and give it a shot of steroids. That appears to be what we've seen.
Well, and Austin Goolsbee was fired by the campaign when Obama wanted to say, no, I'm really serious, I'm going to renegotiate NAFTA. And Austin Goolsbee is now rehired, and he's back in the White House.
Number one guy.
Yeah, working in the Council on Economic Advisors. And as I pointed out in my book, The Late Great USA, which, by the way, is now $10 on Amazon.com in paperback. I want people to take it. That's going to be the basis of what I'm writing about America for Sale, which will be my next book in October. I'm writing as much as I can about this because I think Obama is going to demonstrate himself to be a globalist, just like George Bush was. And again, NAFTA or open borders is another policy area I'm having a hard time telling any difference between the Barack Obama presidency and the George Bush presidency.
Yeah. No, and apparently Glenn Beck is with you on that, but I don't know, maybe you know him better than I do. Hey, before you go, the big news story today is the war escalating in Pakistan. I know you do a lot of work on foreign policy. What is your analysis on this? What's going to happen here?
Well, I'm very concerned. I mean, the Taliban is closing in on Islamabad, the capital in Pakistan, and I'm not convinced that there'll be any way to keep the nuclear weapons in Pakistan out of the hands of the Taliban. I also believe that the secret police, the military intelligence, the ISI of the Pakistani government is working hand in hand with the Taliban.
Yeah. We'll have you back to talk more about that. Good luck to you, Jerry. Appreciate you being on again. Jerry Corsi's Red Alert, WorldNet Daily. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.